Welcome back, everyone, to the American Bar Association Civil Rights and Social Justice Section's Chair Chat. You know me by now. My name is Robin Runge. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based here in Washington, D.C. I have the privilege of being the chair of the Civil Rights and Social Justice Section of the American Bar Association this year. And as you know, as a part of that privilege, I have this unbelievable opportunity to interview phenomenal lawyers doing amazing work to increase access to justice and addressing really key civil rights and social justice issues. And today's guest is no exception to that. She truly is a human rights defender, and it is an honor and a privilege that I have known her longer than either one of us will ever confess. But my colleague and my friend today and our guest is Nicole Phillips. And she is the legal director of Haitian Bridge Alliance, which is a nonprofit community organization that advocates for fair and humane immigration policies and connects migrants with humanitarian, legal, and social services, with a particular focus on Black migrants, the Haitian community, women, LGBTQ plus individuals, and survivors of torture and other human rights abuses. She is also an adjunct professor at UC College of the Law, San Francisco, where she co-teaches the human rights and rule of law in Haiti. She has been certified as an expert witness on country conditions in Haiti in dozens of US immigration cases and has appeared before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and several United Nations human rights bodies on a variety of issues. Based in Port-au-Prince, Haiti from 2010 to 2018, Ms. Phillips worked on high-profile human rights litigation and advocacy campaigns as a staff attorney with the Institute for Justice and Democracy in Haiti, and she regularly provides legal and human rights analysis to US and international media. So now you know why I am so excited to be here with my friend Nicole today. You can hear from that description that she literally is doing some of the most important work that we do as lawyers to safeguard democracy and to address civil and human rights issues. So thank you for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule today, Nicole, to be with us and to share, because I think what we're interested in learning more about from you is the work that you're doing right now with immigrants, and specifically how you see sexual violence issues in that work. So I think I'll just start by having you share a little bit about the work you're currently doing and the issues you're facing, and then maybe we can get into sexual violence issues in a minute. And this is a great time for me to, before we get started, to say to folks that we will be talking about sexual violence and rape today. And these are very difficult topics. Unfortunately, they are epidemic human rights violations in our society around the world. And yet they're incredibly, incredibly difficult things to talk about. And so I encourage you, if you're watching anytime, to take care of yourself. And what taking care of yourself means is whatever you mean it to be. But most importantly, it means that if because of this topic, you need to step away or not watch the rest of this, please take care of yourself and do so at any time now. But I hope you'll stick around for parts of this if you can. The other thing is that along with this, we're going to provide information about a national hotline for sexual assault survivors and family members of survivors, so that you can reach out to that if you need support after listening to today's conversation. I hope I haven't scared folks away, but it is incredibly important because of the trauma associated with these crimes that we recognize the impact it has. And we still need to talk about it and make sure that we understand what we're talking about so that we name it, we describe it, and then we can find more effective interventions to address it. So with that, please, Nicole, tell us a little bit about your work at Haitian Bridge Alliance now and your long history, frankly, working with Haitian individuals, both in Haiti and here in the States, and on immigration issues. And thank you again.
Thank you so much, Robin, for that really generous introduction that actually just makes me feel old. So I want to talk a little bit about the why I work at Haitian Bridge Alliance, and that kind of talks about my background. So when I moved to Haiti in 2010, with working as a staff attorney for the Institute for Justice and Democracy in Haiti, as you described, we were working on human rights, high-profile human rights cases, trying to work with Haitian human rights lawyers there to hold the Haitian government accountable also to hold the United Nations accountable for human rights violations like bringing cholera to Haiti and sexual assault against Haitian women and girls in paternity cases. So it was a whole host of accountability that I was working on. And I, really the fact that Haiti is so close to the United States, just, an hour and a half or so by plane, one of our closest neighbors, it felt like the good work I wanted to do. And I wanted to focus my work on what we would consider root causes of migration. Haitians don't want to leave Haiti. So let's work together to figure out how we can make sure Haiti has a more robust democracy and justice system so they don't have to leave Haiti. And so I didn't know anything about immigration. That wasn't my focus. I was a human rights lawyer. I am a human rights lawyer. Lo and behold, I heard in around the 2018 time period, 17, 18, I heard that more and more Haitians were coming to the US-Mexico border. And they were coming to California, where I am from. And so after having done, years and years of hopefully good work in Haiti, and I was also, taught international human rights law at a law school in Haiti, and having done that for a number of years, in 2018, it seemed like we needed some experts who really understood country conditions in Haiti, who really understands, can really had teaching experience with Haitians, to assist in making sure that immigration rights are also being respected. The right to asylum is being respected in the United States. And so I moved back and started working with Haitian Bridge Alliance, which is an organization that was created in about 2016 in California, in San Diego, at the US-Mexico border, by an incredible woman named Gerline Joseph, who herself is a Haitian immigrant. And most of our staff are Haitian, of Haitian descent and are Haitian immigrants. And it's just an incredible staff of people who are from the community that we serve. And so we accompany Haitian migrants from, we're in Panama, we're in Mexico, we're in the United States. We are understanding what the human rights abuses are that impact, in particular, Haitians on the move. And of course, within that, women always come about. There are always particular circumstances that impact women, from violence to access to maternal health care and other types of discrimination against women, layered with being migrant, layered with being Black, and often a real minority within the areas that they're transiting through. So we do a lot of policy work. We do impact litigation on big cases involving Haitian immigrants in the United States. And we also do a lot of direct services. We also provide asylum, temporary protected status, TPS applications, that kind of thing for Haitians. So a whole host of issues, really in solidarity as much as possible with the Haitian community.
Nicole, it's just amazing to hear not just what you're doing now, but what you've been doing. And I just want to lift up what you just finished with, which is, I can't imagine how much it means to the people that you have the privilege to serve, to be served by people from their community and their culture, or people who are familiar. I mean, it's just a phenomenal service. And I think that within the larger immigration crisis that we are currently experiencing globally, there's a migratory, people are more on the move today, right? Like the numbers are staggering. So I always remind myself that the United States is a part of a larger puzzle that way, right? That we have people forcibly migrating, and then we have people choosing to migrate. And those are two very different circumstances, but there are millions and millions of people. And I think in the context of the US border with Mexico, we don't often get a deeper dive into understanding who these individuals are, and what they're fleeing from and what they've experienced. And I just, wanted to lift up what you said about your experience living in Haiti, which is people are not, they don't want to leave, right? And I think we need to live with that knowledge and awareness, like they're leaving because they have no choice. And I'm sure you're seeing that on a daily basis. And unfortunately, you and I share a background and commitment to ending gender-based violence. And I know that that has been a part of what you have witnessed and heard about in the work that you did when you were in Haiti. But then more recently, I'm guessing that's a part of the services that you're providing because of the unique circumstances relating to Haiti's political situation and its safety issues right now. And so I think it would be wonderful for you to maybe give us a little tutorial, a little history, a little understanding better of the context of Haiti that people are fleeing from, and then how that manifests in how they're showing up in your program seeking, desperately seeking safety.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to do that. And I sort of want to start out by just sort of honoring, I don't want, we want to be really upfront and frank about the stories that I've heard of sexual and gender-based violence, and at the same time, don't want us to reduce Haiti and Haitians to the stories that I'm going to be talking about. And it's also important to sort of understand that a lot of the violent tactics that have been used politically and by gangs against Haitian women were used under the Jean-Claude and François Duvalier regime in the 1960s through 80s, and that those governments were funded by the US government. And also to understand that what is being recreated, some of the violent tactics are being recreated back from slavery when Haiti became the first country to declare abolish slavery and the first country of independent movement, right, of former slaves. And so back in 1804. So I want to sort of recognize that colonialism and the violent repression that Haitians endured for so many centuries and how that can be reproduced into today. So having said that, what we're facing in Haiti now, I sort of have broken it down into, I like to break it down into about 4 different types of violence that women are facing right now in Haiti. And one of them is political. Another one is sort of gang violence, and those two right now are coming together. We also have what I call sort of acquaintance or stranger violence, and then the last one is domestic violence, which we all know what domestic violence is. But it's something that's often not talked about in Haiti very, very often, or very, very rarely reported. But the political and the gang is sort of what's more new. When I worked in Haiti, we worked at a public interest. I worked at a public interest law firm there that had a sexual violence prevention program. It was called the Rape and Accountability Project. And we worked with women, Haitian lawyers, and we worked through, they have what they call the partie civile, the civil party procedure in they're a civil law system like France, handed down from Napoleon. And so we were allowed to intervene and actually be counsel for the survivors, for the victims in criminal cases. And so we could put on evidence, we could call, we could do everything as if we were the prosecution, which was really exciting for the prosecution and exciting for our clients. And so in those cases, I mostly saw stranger rapes. I saw 60 to 70% of our clients were under the age of 18.
Fascinating.
And they were a lot of like neighbors, neighborhood boys. They were usually over 18. They were teachers. They were priests or ministers. They were like acquaintances or strangers, and they were opportunists. They were walking on the way to somewhere, or they were in the house alone. That was the majority of cases that we dealt with. Occasionally it was a cousin or somebody with closer access. Now the cases that we're dealing with are more in the political and gang range, which is even harder to have accountability for, because the justice system was pretty broken when I worked there up until 2018, and right now is just almost non-functioning. If you try and report a crime, the police won't respond. The prosecutors would never issue the case. Police officers are outgunned by gangs, and so they can't do anything to keep people safe or even report a crime. So we've really gone backwards by years. And so, historically, just recently in the early 1990s under a coup d'etat, and in the 2004 to 2006 in a coup d'etat, what we saw was what we called at the time paramilitary, we call them now gangs, that were systematically raping women Why were they doing this? Why was this one of their main crimes? Which is because women are considered, in Creole, we call it the potomitan, which is like the backbone of Haitian society. It's the beam in the middle of the house that holds up the whole house. That's what
Hmm.
women are considered. And so when you break them, and these crimes that they committed broke them, then you are terrorizing the whole the community, into submission by this
Hmm.
physical and emotional and psychological breaking of the victims and their families. And so we've seen a resurgence of that. We hadn't, we saw that in 2004 to 2006, and we're now starting to see that in 2018, 19, and 20. Um, and sometimes these are government sanctioned massacres where the government now in Haiti, to wield control, has been using gangs as their paramilitary to commit these crimes,
I've seen
control
that in the news. Yeah.
to control these areas. And so, for example, like I'll just give one example so that we kind of understand what we're dealing with. But
Hmm.
in July of 2022, there was an area that was invaded over the course of about 10 days in Cité Soleil, which is an urban area in Port-au-Prince. And about 300 people were killed, according to human rights investigators that went in immediately afterwards. And about 53 women were repeatedly and brutally raped. And this was a gang turf war. And just to give you some examples, there was one woman that was reported was a 30-year-old. She was at home with her three daughters when gunmen broke into her home and asked her to reveal this man that they accused her of hiding in her house. And they searched her home and they didn't find her, but they raped her and set fire to her home. In another case, a woman reported that she was a mother of five. She was in her home. Six gang members, at least, she can't count them all, came into her home and in the presence of her spouse, and they all gang raped her one after the other. And then they forced her to attend as they executed her spouse in front of her and her children. So this is sort of the brutality, and it's intended not, it's intended as if it's war. It's a war against the territory to really control it,
Yes.
and to terrorize. And so these types of things have been happening around Port-au-Prince. But gangs in general, when they're not participating in this, they're committing kidnappings. Rape is something that is standard practice in kidnappings of women and girls. Um, and um, and gangs also just operate with anarchy. And so if they see a woman in the street and they want her as their girlfriend, they will do whatever
Right.
they can to get her.
Right.
There's sort of this operation of anarchy that's sort of happening. So that's sort of, and this is in addition to the domestic violence that's going to happen in such insecure
Right. We
times.
need to remind ourselves that's not stopping. Right. Yeah.
In addition to two prisons have been broken and people have been freed from these prisons. We've got thousands of prisoners in the Port-au-Prince area that have been released and are out on the streets. So it's also not including the just random, the types of sexual assaults I was dealing with when
Hmm.
we were prosecuting when we were living there, when I was living there.
Wow. Well, thank you, Nicole, for helping us understand better the different ways that rape, sexual violence, gender-based violence is occurring. And I just, I'm reminded as I listen to you um, share these unbelievably difficult stories of individuals that we know that what you're describing, this intentionality around using rape as a tool of war, is unfortunately not unique to Haiti. It is prevalent in throughout the country and in the world, actually. So I'm aware. We've heard some coverage of a rape in Ukraine. We've heard about it in Sudan. We've heard about it right on 10/7. So I just want to say that unfortunately, this is a global phenomenon. It is not limited to any society, right, or any culture, right? It is a global human rights uh, crisis, and deepening our understanding as you are today is so important to getting to the next piece of the puzzle that I want to ask you about. And you've already alluded to it, which is the accountability piece. It's so challenging when we understand that it's an individual, like you were describing domestic violence. You and I have been doing that work for a long time, and we know how difficult that is. But when it's state sponsored, I would argue, possibly, rape, holding a state or a government accountable in any way, shape, or form. And in addition to, I want to say, in addition to the individual, not instead of, who actually does the act, raises some really interesting challenges. And it also, as you, I think, were describing, leads to this is why people are, we've seen an increase in forced immigration from Haiti, including but not limited to the United States. And so you're seeing women sharing these stories with you, right, when they come into your program seeking support services. And so you are trying to provide them with support around their immigration status, but they're a whole human who have been through unbelievable trauma. And so the accountability takes a slightly different form. But if you could share with us a little bit, and thank you again, because it's really important. And this is where I want to just let everybody know that the ABA Civil Rights and Social Justice Section and the ABA Commission on Domestic and Sexual Violence are co-sponsoring an event on June 24th on rape as a tool of war. And Nicole's going to be talking more there about these issues. But her conversation with us is related, so I wanted to make sure that we mention that. But yeah, so please help us understand the accountability challenges. And again, like, how does this manifest itself in what you're seeing in people fleeing to the United States who've experienced sexual violence in those myriad contexts?
Yeah, well, it's difficult, and the program at the office that I was working in did an incredible job of really really brave and smart women trying to prosecute these cases. But the reality is the gangs have attacked, burned down some of the major courthouses in Port-au-Prince, and police officers are terrified and are certainly not going to be reporting on or trying to arrest the very gang members that they may even be in cahoots with. And so the impunity is wide. And even on a good day, before gangs really descended into Haiti and became so prevalent in the 2017-18 range, it was very difficult to be prosecuting these cases anyways. And a lot of that is because of male chauvinism and a society that doesn't necessarily acknowledge the problem of sexual and gender-based violence against women. And so that already was really challenging. We had a whole host of legal challenges around that. For example, requiring medical certificates that nobody could get, that aren't actually in the criminal procedural law, but somehow became this practice to require, and was hard for women to get that. And if you didn't have it, it was considered evidence of consent.
That's right, that it didn't happen.
That it didn't
or if it
happen.
Right.
So it was really on her, it was really on her, the burden on the woman to prove consent. And even in our offices, which had, lots of smart lawyers and took the time to really litigate cases well, the easy ones were minors because it was statutory rape. And even then, we often had some difficulty, even though it was statutory rape. But for over 18, it was very, very difficult to prosecute those. And that was on a good day before the justice system just completely collapsed. And so, and this, I think, this lack of justice and lack of accountability in general, and impunity for violence, it really shows women that the state's not there for them and it's not there to protect them. And that is one of the major reasons that I see women leave and try and take their kids if they can, or leave and hope that their kids can come later, but flee in any way they can and go elsewhere for safety and security. And Haitians tended to flee Haiti starting in around the 2011 after the earthquake, and more recently in these darker times. They've gone to Brazil and Chile and Mexico, where they have faced sexual assault and other forms of sexual and gender-based violence. But in particular, the Darien Gap in Panama, which connects Colombia to Panama, which is the route everybody has to take from South America to get up into the US-Mexico border. I think it's really important for us to talk about what's not really spoken about, which is the thousands of women that are allegedly being raped as they are. As you mentioned, there is no choice sometimes to leave home when the journey that you don't know has to be safer than what you do know, because
Right.
what you do
Right.
know is rape
Right.
and sexual assault, and that
Right.
you could be a victim at any point. And so people are choosing to leave. And when they're getting into Panama, into this jungle, which is about 100 kilometers in distance, but it's through the jungle. It takes several days to walk it. The only way
Mm-hmm.
through it is by walking it. And we have heard story after story of women who are people that are Haitians that are traveling in group, and it's not just Haitians, but migrants that are traveling in group. And they can be a group of 100 people, it can be a group of 4 people, but armed people in the jungle will come up to them, and they are armed. They have guns, they have machetes, they have batons, sticks, and they will tell everybody, they will have them take off their clothes. They will search women, including their genitals, to
Mm-hmm.
see if they're
Mm-hmm.
hiding anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had stories. I spoke with one man who had seen 7 migrants being raped in front of him from Haiti,
Yeah.
from Venezuela, from African countries. He saw 3 children raped in front of their parents, and another child around 14 years old being raped, along with her mother next to her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I spoke to actually somebody from Ecuador, where she was with her 5-year-old son in the Darien, and they witnessed, both of them, a 13, 14, and 16-year-old being raped by these gangs in Panama. One of the guys came up to the son and put 5 years old sitting in her laps crying, put a gun to his head and said, "If you ever tell anybody about this, I'm going to kill you."
Right.
They
Right.
saw that man when they arrived in Panama at the reception
Oh,
center for
God.
migrants.
Oh, my
And he
God.
looked at them like, "You
Yeah.
better never tell anybody."
Right.
And when I reached her, she needed some assistance because her sister had subsequently died. And just because, as a human rights lawyer, I was speaking to her in the migrant reception center, everybody stigmatized her and were teasing her and wouldn't let her eat.
Oh, my
And
God.
they didn't even know that she had witnessed the violence. But that's the stigma against, and how they didn't want her talking to a human rights lawyer. So of
Mm-hmm.
course the Panamanian government doesn't want these survivors and witnesses to talk about the crimes. There's no accountability at all. In fact, you're going to be targeted and stigmatized if you do speak up, which
Absolutely.
means they think they're going to be retaliated against and potentially killed because the guy was right there.
Right.
So
Right.
this is the lack of accountability that Haitians that are fleeing their dangerous country are trying to find refuge and peace and education for their children
Yeah.
and safety. And instead they're confronted with this. So it's piling on the layers of trauma and feeling insecure.
Yeah. No, it's just unbelievable. And I think you're right. I think we don't fully understand and we don't hear enough about this particular form of violence in the Darien Gap. And we don't, I think, fully appreciate all the myriad reasons why someone who has witnessed and experienced forms of sexual violence will not speak of it. It is literally because they're trying to save their life sometimes. And people, I think, don't understand that and misinterpret that as meaning it never happened, right? If you're not going to speak about it, then it never happened. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And that's why the work that you've been doing and that you're currently doing, Nicole, is so important. And I want to just thank you so much for giving us your time today and for the work you've been doing all these years and the work you're doing now. I know that you are on the front line, and it makes me proud because I've known you for a long time and I really admire you in your commitment. And so it's been a real honor to have you with us today to educate us, right, about the experiences of Haitians and Haitian migrants, and specifically Haitian women on the move, and the incredible abuse that they face and experience along the corridors coming to the United States or elsewhere, with many other individuals, and helping us understand actually this role of rape as a tool, right, in civil war. And again, not unique, unfortunately, to Haiti. But thank you. And as I said, those of you with us today, if you want to hear more about this and really hear about what are the international tools and the domestic tools that we try to use to address and hold accountable those who use rape as a tool of war, please join us on June 24th. The information about that webinar is going to be available with this. So you should get that along with this, and you'll hear from Nicole and some other esteemed experts. We're really privileged to have you. So thank you, Nicole.
My pleasure. Thank you, Robin.